She was a young woman who had a whole life ahead of her. Everybody was jittery, wondering what had happened to her.
Really a very dangerous person. This is the real whodunit.
Crimes don't really happen here. She'd been placed inside a suitcase. This was a brutal, horrific murder and an awful way to leave the body of a teenage girl.
I've been a criminal lawyer for over 30 years, and I've never dealt with a case like this before.
To have 3 trials is very rare, but the case was of such importance.
He would have walked free. And given what he had done before, we were in no doubt that he was a dangerous man.
Nestled in the southwest corner of Kent, the so-called Garden of England, this is the leafy, historic town of Royal Tunbridge Wells.
I would describe Tunbridge Wells as a safe family sort of location, wealthy and middle class.
There's a really low level of crime in the area. I feel very safe walking around at night.
People enjoy a very peaceful life on the whole and generally go about their business.
Tunbridge Wells is your archetypal Middle England. It's picturesque, it's surrounded by beautiful countryside. Crimes don't really happen here.
But that picture postcard image was about to be shattered. Kent police receive a call about a missing person, 17-year-old Terry Edmonds. The day before Easter Monday, Terry had arranged to meet her boyfriend, but she never showed up.
This was really out of character. She stayed in contact with her boyfriend regularly. She texted him on the hour almost, and he did the same back to her. They sent multiple texts to each other each day. So the fact that she did not text him was really unusual and set the alarm bells ringing.
Terry's boyfriend sent her 20 texts, but she never replied to any of them.
Her boyfriend got concerned, tried to phone her, didn't get any response, and then alerted her mum. And her mum then reported her missing to the police.
This disappearance was out of the ordinary for the happy-go-lucky teen.
She was bright and intelligent. She had 8 A-grade GCSEs. She was fiercely independent. She was a teenager who was turning into a young woman.
She decided to spread her wings, leaving home at just 16 to live in a housing association hostel in the centre of Tunbridge Wells.
She had aspirations to be a nurse. She was waiting to join college. She was too young to start training at that point to be a nurse. But from everything that we've heard, she was a caring, lovely, independent and headstrong, her mother said, but a young woman who had a whole life ahead of her.
She was very popular, lots of friends, was a girly girl. They described her as always liked to look nice, took care of herself.
But those friends were all equally puzzled at her disappearance, the only lead police have. She was 5 miles away in the town of Tonbridge when she last made contact.
She was in touch with her boyfriend, and she'd been to Tunbridge for the day, and she said, "I'm in Tunbridge Park, I'll be coming back soon." And then she didn't arrive back in Tunbridge Wells. So we started doing some searching in Tunbridge, because that's where she was last heard of.
So police cast their net wide, searching parks, old buildings, rivers, anywhere the missing teen could be. But the trail runs cold. With no other options, police appeal to the public and press for help. Her disappearance makes a big splash across the local media.
Tunbridge Wells is a place where crime doesn't normally happen. It's a tranquil place. So when a teenage girl goes missing, it becomes a news story. And Terry was just 17 years old. She had a mother, she had a boyfriend. So that's a story of local significance.
Terry going missing was really shocking for the people of Tunbridge Wells, and people were extremely worried. Everybody was jittery, wondering where she was and what had happened to her.
It's a closed community, people talk, so if there's something that does happen, then word does spread quite quickly.
It's 10 days since Terry went missing, and still no word from her. The family makes another desperate appeal to the public.
As time passed, we get more and more concerned when someone doesn't stay in contact. And what we were really more concerned about with this case was she'd not been in touch with her mum. Her mum would tell us that Terry always would respond to her. Even if it was a, I don't want to talk to you, she would get a response. So when that didn't happen, obviously the concerns were raised.
Concerns are also rising across her close-knit hometown of Tunbridge Wells.
I think as the days went by and Terry was missing, fear started to grow that something terrible had happened to her. And there was a big community effort. There were posters everywhere. The taxi drivers all carried flyers. And there was even an information point by police for two reasons. One, to gather information, and other reason to try and reassure people, because there was a lot of worry at that time.
In the meantime, police have been trawling through hours of CCTV footage close to where she was last seen, in the nearby town of Tonbridge. Suddenly, there's a breakthrough. Terry is spotted at Tonbridge railway station on the day of her disappearance.
When we checked the CCTV, we actually found that she had actually got on the train to go to Tunbridge Wells. And then checking the CCTV at Tunbridge Wells railway station, we found that she had got off the train at Tunbridge Wells. So at that point, the searching moved from Tunbridge to Tunbridge Wells.
The investigation suddenly picks up pace in the hunt to find the missing teen. Police now draw up a search plan using this new CCTV sighting.
The last sighting of Terry Edmonds was at Tunbridge Wells rail station, where she got off the train at 6:23. So she walked across here, and Terry was never seen again.
Investigators plan a search grid around this last known location. The hunt leads to the supermarket car park opposite the station. On the 12th day of Terry's disappearance, there are reports of frenzied police activity on wasteland next to the car park.
This area was absolutely cordoned off. There were police everywhere, police vehicles, so the public had absolutely no entry. They closed the car park off while forensics were working at the scene, so this was an absolute no-go area for the public.
The search teams had made a grim discovery.
The suitcase was discovered under a vehicle ramp going into the car park. And when the searching officers opened it, they found a young lady's body. She was in a fetal position in that suitcase.
This young woman appeared to have been mercilessly strangled.
She'd been placed inside a suitcase that had been well hidden behind a wall, a squalid, desolate and dirty spot to leave a young girl's body. This was a brutal, horrific murder.
When the suitcase was found with a body inside, I think it was the news that everyone had been dreading in a way. I think most of us had that sinking feeling that it was going to be Terry.
Police in Tunbridge Wells have been searching for missing teen Terry Edmonds. On the 12th day of her disappearance, they make a gruesome discovery under a car park ramp close to the station. The body of a teenage girl is found stuffed into a suitcase. She'd been strangled.
This was a brutal, horrific murder, a desperately tragic and awful way to leave the body of a teenage girl. The person who killed her had no sense of humanity to leave a teenager in such a position.
The body in the suitcase was found behind a wall, just here. Immediately, police taped off the area, and there were lots and lots of police officers, forensic teams, sifting through the area looking for evidence.
Police are in no doubt that the body in the dark green suitcase is tragically Terry's.
We had to go through formal identification process, but we knew from the description that that was Terry in the suitcase.
The next day, the body is formally identified as Terry Edmonds. The news rocks the idyllic town of Tunbridge Wells.
To hear that she'd been murdered and her body found in such an awful way, stuffed into a suitcase, I think people were absolutely horrified and so sad.
Terry's disappearance quickly turned into a murder investigation, and that really sent shockwaves through the close-knit community of Tunbridge Wells. It scared people, primarily because she was a young teenage girl, but also because there are many parents in Tunbridge Wells who feared that there could be a killer on the loose.
To quell residents' fears, police presence is stepped up across the town. Investigators hit the streets, carrying out door-to-door inquiries for any leads on the killer.
Kent Police followed a lot of lines of inquiry. They had 50 police officers working on it. They were talking to quite a few people in relation to her disappearance and death.
The post-mortem reveals horrifying injuries to the young teen.
The details of the post-mortem were shocking, they were horrific. And as a seasoned journalist, it was upsetting. Terry had endured a really brutal and violent attack. She had been physically overpowered. She'd been raped, and she'd suffered a number of injuries. And her last moments would have been truly horrific.
The post-mortem examination showed that she had grazes on her back and she'd been strangled.
Terry was strangled by a scarf that she was wearing. She looped it through, and by pulling it tight, he'd strangled her. She had some facial injuries where she'd taken some strikes to the face as well.
And she was probably smothered with a pink sheet, which was found away from the scene.
Blood is found on this mysterious pink sheet, which is retrieved with Terry's trainers and her cigarette lighter in a pile of rubbish close to her body. They're sent off for analysis at the lab. But it's the suitcase that police hope could be the key to finding her killer.
Once the body had been removed, then the suitcase itself was considered as a crime scene. And that crime scene was essentially packaged up carefully and submitted to the Forensic Science Laboratory for examination.
Police hope testing for traces of DNA could provide answers to some of their biggest questions.
Initially, we were looking to see where the suitcase had come from. Could we have an owner of the suitcase? Could that be a big clue for us?
Whilst the lab pores over the suitcase, the spotlight falls on the person who raised the alarm. Terry's boyfriend. New evidence comes to light about a fallout with his girlfriend.
The last person that the police were initially aware of that had spoken to Terry was her boyfriend, and they'd had a row. Bearing in mind, most murders are committed by people that are known to the victim.
Samples of the boyfriend's DNA are also found on Terry's body.
Police investigating the disappearance of 17-year-old Terry Edmonds have today made an arrest.
Detectives arrest Terry's boyfriend at his home in the nearby village of Hadlow. He's taken in for questioning.
He was living with his mother in a house in Hadlow, and when he was arrested, police went to his property, uniformed officers were stationed outside, and forensic officers went into his house and conducted a search all night.
But eventually, this would draw a blank.
They did release him without charge because it was quite clear he was not involved in any way, shape or form. And it was clear he was at work, and there was no way that he was involved.
With the boyfriend eliminated, police focus on the suitcase. Forensic scientists have been putting their star piece of evidence under the microscope, and the suitcase has yielded a significant lead.
We recovered various samples, including a sample of DNA from the retractable handle. And the retractable handle had like a little switch on it. So we recovered material from that switch, and that DNA profile matched an individual that was of interest to the police investigation. That was a light bulb moment in the investigation, because we felt that, you know, that would lead investigatively to the identification of a suspect.
So police make a second arrest, and the man is brought in for questioning. It's a turning point for the investigation.
That suspect, in this case, turned out to be the previous owner of the suitcase. Now, that person then gave information to the police to say, that is my suitcase, but I gave that suitcase away. I believe, actually, it was given to the Salvation Army, so a charity donation.
As the police hit another brick wall, the clock's still ticking, and there's a brutal murderer on the run.
Clearly a dangerous person, clearly a very dangerous person, and trying to get them. This is the real whodunit.
So detectives have to go back to the drawing board, refocusing their efforts on the location where Terry was found. The car park. Through their inquiries, investigators discover it was often part of her regular journey through town.
And she used the car park as a short cut through, if you like, to make her way back to the hostel that she was staying at, that was just at the rear of the car park.
Though nothing on the police's CCTV trawl shows Terry's last suspected steps through it.
There was no CCTV in the car park itself, but there was CCTV at the exit, and she wasn't seen to leave. So we checked everything, double-checked it, triple-checked it. We couldn't see her leave.
Police can now prove Terry never left the car park, which means she must have been killed there. They double down their efforts to find out who else could have been using it on the Easter Monday evening she went missing.
We had to look wider, and we were looking at other people. And within the car park in Tunbridge Wells, there were some people that we called the rough sleepers. They were homeless people who'd found certain areas of the car park, stairwells of the car park, that they used as accommodation. And on those stairwells, certain people sleeping rough there on cardboard mattresses, sleeping bags, duvets, that kind of thing. We started looking at those people to see if there's anyone there was of interest to us. We made inquiries to the rough sleepers in the car park. Did any of them own a suitcase? And they all denied it.
But intelligence from an officer on the beat suggests otherwise.
A local police officer told us that he knew of one person who had a suitcase. And we looked through our records and we'd spoken to that person, he denied it. So there was a reason why he denied being the owner of a suitcase.
With their suspicions raised, detectives head straight back to the car park. They need to find the rough sleeper whose story doesn't quite stack up.
We then went and spoke to him again. He said he did have a suitcase, but someone had stolen it, and it was kept in the stairwell. Someone had emptied his clothes out from it, and the suitcase had gone.
But for investigators, something about his story doesn't seem right. So they arrest him. Perhaps this new suspect could blow the case wide open. In Tunbridge Wells, 17-year-old Terry Edmonds has been found dead. She was sexually assaulted and dumped inside a suitcase next to a car park. Police have made another arrest. A local homeless man has been brought in for questioning. 21-year-old Philip Bell.
He confirmed that the suitcase that Terry was in was the suitcase that he had previously owned. And we asked him more about it, but he insisted that the suitcase had been stolen.
Nevertheless, there were little glitches in his story that were starting to cause the police concern, and that's when they started to kind of zone in on him as a suspect.
Although police can find no evidence that their victim, Terry, knew Bell, they realise this isn't the first time he's had a brush with the law.
Philip Bell came to Tunbridge Wells from Salisbury, and he sort of set up a base in Tunbridge Wells.
He had left school at the age of 15 without any qualifications and had started living on the street. He got involved in petty crime. He became a drug dealer.
Philip Bell had been in Tunbridge Wells for about 2 years, living rough, and he was heavily into drugs, so cannabis, crack, speed, solvents. So he was a big drug taker and just drifting around, really.
And Bell's transient lifestyle puts him at the location where police believe Terry met her fate. The car park. Through their inquiries, police are told Bell had set up home on the landing of one of the disused stairwells. In the basement of that stairwell, forensic investigators find something sinister, with a link to Terry.
She had some dirt, some debris on her, inside her clothes, that was directly linked to the bottom of the stairwell. And at the bottom of that stairwell, her blood was found.
The fact that her blood, her being in that stairwell and injured was really important because it identified the attack site, essentially.
So police have found their murder scene. But during questioning, Bell denies he was ever in the stairwell, or even the car park, at the time when Terry disappeared.
He told them that he had nothing to do with Terry's murder, and he hadn't even seen her.
However, when investigators seize his clothes, something raises their suspicions.
Having taken his trousers, they noticed that he had grazing on his knees, and that was consistent with him being astride Terry when he assaulted her and grazing his knees.
Now, he said he'd done that playing football. Now, we interviewed all the people that he used to play football with, and none of them ever remembered him actually falling down or hurting his knees whilst playing football in the time frame we were talking about. So again, that disproved part of what he was saying.
Although the case against Bell is beginning to build, the evidence is largely circumstantial. Detectives still don't have enough proof to charge their prime suspect with murder.
With there being no other evidence at that particular time, we had to release him on bail whilst we carried out other inquiries.
It's a blow for the investigation. Just days later, searching for answers about her daughter's death, Terry's mum once again makes an emotional public appeal.
I am begging you, please, if anybody knows anything, however little, get in touch, because anything to help catch the person that's done this will help.
Over the next months, detectives work 24/7 in the hope to get the potentially dangerous Philip Bell back behind bars. They doggedly trawl through hours and hours of the town's CCTV footage for anything that could link him to Terry's disappearance. Suddenly, something catches their eye.
It was sometime later we were looking at more of the CCTV, and we found Philip Bell. We'd found him walking past the railway station and going into the car park just a few seconds after we suspect Terry had gone in.
Although we never saw him and Terry together, it was clear from the timing that he followed her in moments after she went into the car park.
Police now have proof that their suspected killer and his victim would have crossed paths. And that's not all.
We then, about an hour later, we had CCTV of him leaving the car park. So that sort of brought us to a conclusion that she'd gone in, he'd gone in shortly afterwards, he'd come out, but she hadn't. So that added to our suspicions that he could have been responsible.
For the investigation team, this is really big. The new CCTV blows apart Bell's claim that he wasn't at the murder scene at the time of Terry's attack.
Initially, when Philip Bell was arrested and interviewed in May, he denied that he'd returned to the car park. Although there was no CCTV or eyewitness accounts from what happened within the car park, the CCTV was absolutely crucial because it demonstrated that Terry and Philip Bell were effectively on a collision course as they entered the car park.
Detectives also spot something strange about Bell's clothing as he leaves the car park.
When we suspect was the hour in which Terry was killed, he came out wearing a different pair of jeans. And we're able to identify that from CCTV because one pair was baggy and one pair was slim-fitting. So we were asking why had he changed that clothing?
Soon, investigators come up with a sinister theory.
Our theory was that he had got blood on his trousers, taken and disposed of those trousers, and changed them in that hour. Because why else? Why would you suddenly change your trousers halfway through the day?
Could this explain Bell's change of clothing? There was only one way to find out. Philip Bell is rearrested and questioned by detectives once again.
He maintained that he was not in the car park around that time on that day. He was then shown the CCTV, which put him in the car park for an hour and him leaving that car park. And he admitted then that he had been in the car park that day, and he actually admitted that he'd been in, it was called the Lonely Staircase because there was no exit from it to any main part of the car park. It was where Terry was actually killed.
But Bell is adamant he never saw Terry or took part in her attack.
Philip Bell had said during that hour between him going to the car park and him coming out of the car park, he'd been in his sleeping area smoking quite a large amount of cannabis.
What he said was that he was, his words, stoned on cannabis, which was illegal. That's why he lied to the police about where he was.
During that lost hour Bell couldn't account for, he claimed to have smoked over 7 grams of cannabis. But evidence from a drug specialist would blow holes in his story.
We were able to disprove that through the use of a drug expert who was able to analyse the CCTV of him walking in and him walking out, and saying, walking out, he was not under the influence of cannabis, such as would have been the case if he'd consumed what he said he had.
It seems the suspect who claimed he was high was walking far too steady on his feet.
He couldn't be walking in that way if he was smoking a large amount of cannabis in a short period of time.
For the team's advisors at the Crown Prosecution Service, the case against Bell is beginning to stack up.
CCTV evidence was absolutely key in this case because it provided evidence to undermine Mr. Bell's initial account that he hadn't returned to the car park. And it also gave us evidence that he changed his clothing as well during what we called the lost hour between him entering the car park with Terry and then leaving the car park after he murdered her.
Meanwhile, the forensics lab also has exciting news. An item of Bell's clothing that was seized during his first arrest has also yielded a result.
In the CCTV of Philip Bell in Tunbridge Wells, he was wearing a very distinctive hooded top. It was a Fat Farm hoodie. And that hoodie was submitted to the laboratory for examination. and on it was a blood stain. It was a very small blood stain, about the size of a penny, that matched Terry Edmonds.
And the lab finds more evidence on Bell's belongings that were seized by police in the stairwell where he slept. On his sleeping bag, 2 large stains of blood. Through DNA testing, these are also confirmed as Terry's.
It was absolutely pivotal in the case because it demonstrated that there was a very clear link between Terry Edmonds, her being injured, and the belongings of Philip Bell and that stairwell.
To add to that, the pink sheet found near Terry's body, that's suspected of being used to smother her, throws up more clues in the forensics lab.
Not only did it have the blood of Terry Edmonds on it, but it also had a very partial footwear mark, and that footwear mark was matched to Philip Bell's training shoes. So collectively, and I suppose circumstantially, things were starting to build as a case against Philip Bell.
Is this the final nail in the coffin for the prime suspect? Forensic investigators find a semen stain on Terry's underwear. That's a partial DNA match to Philip Bell.
Today, a local man, Philip Bell, has been charged with the murder of Terry Edmonds.
With the evidence stacked against him, the 21-year-old homeless drug dealer is charged with the murder of Terry Edmonds. The news spreads through the town of Tunbridge Wells like wildfire.
It meant for the first time we could actually legally name him as the man in connection to Terry's murder.
When Philip Bell was charged, I think there was enormous relief that perhaps they had found Terry's killer. Before that, there had been a little bit of impatience from the public.
Next day, Bell appears at Sevenoaks Magistrates Court charged with Terry's killing. The scene is set for his trial at Crown Court just 3 months later.
So when there was this breakthrough and it was publicised, I think people felt finally Terry's killer will be brought to justice.
In Tunbridge Wells, 17-year-old Terry Edmonds has been found strangled and sexually assaulted, then stuffed inside a suitcase. With the evidence stacked against him, 21-year-old homeless man Philip Bell has been arrested and charged with her murder. He's spotted on CCTV following Terry into a car park, and his hoodie has a stain of blood belonging to his victim. Detectives have built up a chilling theory of how he carried out the attack.
He tried it on with her, she refused, and he then attacked her, killed her, and sexually assaulted her. But having done that, he was a homeless person with no car. He had no means to get rid of the body, but he had a suitcase. So he put the body in a fetal position in the suitcase.
A year after Terry's disappearance, Philip Bell's trial begins at Maidstone Crown Court. He pleads not guilty to her murder.
The thing that struck me about him was he was completely emotionless the whole time. You look into their eyes and there was nothing there. It was quite chilling, actually.
But as the trial progresses, police realise convincing the court of Bell's guilt may not be an open and shut case.
The case against Bell relied entirely on circumstantial evidence. There was no smoking gun, there was no witness who saw him kill Terry Edmonds.
I think that Philip Bell also had a very good defence barrister who was able to just chip away at the little bits of evidence.
It became really a massive trial. I was giving evidence for days on end.
And before long, Bell's defence team has a trick up their sleeve to try and raise doubts in the jury. They point the finger at another rough sleeper in the same car park, one of Bell's associates.
The man had a conviction for manslaughter. And because he lived in the car park, it was suggested by the defence that he was the murderer.
Not only that, but the defence's new suspect could undermine one of the team's key pieces of evidence, the footprint on the pink sheet used to smother Terry.
The man had a pair of Converse trainers found in his possession, which were linked to the pink sheet found at the scene, with a bloody footprint that matched that pair of trainers.
Following a dramatic trial lasting 6 weeks, the jury retires. After 22 hours spent deliberating, they failed to reach a verdict. For Kent Police and the prosecution team, their worst fears have come true.
All the evidence against Philip Bell, it seemed very strong. So it was very disappointing for Terry's mum not being able to get any justice, and for the rest of her family.
With no verdict reached by the jury, the judge orders a retrial. 7 months later, a second trial begins, and a brand new jury hears the case against Philip Bell.
But again, we had the same situation, with evidence being chipped away at by the defence team.
I was thinking, oh no, not again, because I was really concerned that it would be the same Groundhog Day kind of scenario.
This time, the defence focuses on Bell's hoodie. They claim there was an innocent explanation for Terry's blood on it.
They suggested that Philip Bell had brushed past the area where Terry's blood was and got it on his top. Again, I think that what they did was they raised a doubt about that, and the jury just couldn't be sure of it.
Following 19 hours of deliberation, the jury has news.
I think it's fair to say you could cut the atmosphere in that courtroom in Maidstone Crown Court with a knife.
Once again, a jury has failed to reach a verdict.
This is another massive blow for Terry Edmonds' family. They'd sat now through 2 lengthy trials.
There was, on my part, a real sense of shock and disappointment when the jury were unable to return a verdict, and then having to decide what we were going to do.
The team is on the verge of calling it quits.
Now, if we'd done that, Bell would have walked free, and Terry's killer would never have been brought to justice.
But in a last-ditch effort to save the case, the prosecution tries for something rarely attempted in British legal history. A third trial of the same defendant.
And so we argue that it was in the interests of justice to go a third time, which is unusual.
It was the right thing to do. We had an overwhelming case that Terry had been murdered by Philip Bell.
It's a close call, but the judge sides with the prosecution and agrees to keep Bell in custody until the retrial. So the team has one last chance to put Bell behind bars.
If the case fails, then he is going to walk free, and he could be dangerous.
So the prosecution goes back to basics. First, they tackle Bell's claim that he brushed past Terry's blood, left on the stairwell. Forensic scientists run tests using the same small amount of blood that was found on Bell's hoodie. This tiny amount would have started drying if he'd touched it after the attack.
So you can see that if the blood has started to dry quite considerably, the stains start to break up. They're quite gritty, they're quite flaky.
But the stain on Bell's top seemed fresh, questioning his version of events.
The blood stain on the hooded top was not flaky, it was fresh-looking blood that had been transferred, so it demonstrated that it wasn't drying blood. So that blood must have transferred very quickly after it was available, which started to put Philip Bell being involved in the assault on Terry Edmonds and being exposed to her blood after she was injured.
Not only is the forensic evidence building better than before, This time the prosecution have also found a new star witness who has come forward to the police.
A 15-year-old girl came and gave her account about how she had been invited to go to the stairwell that Philip Bell was staying in.
And quite chillingly, she described what we believed had happened to Terry, her being straddled by him and being bruised by him and him trying to assault her. But very fortunately for her, somebody came and disturbed them and she was able to escape.
That was just exactly how we imagined that the attack had taken place on Terry.
And you could hear a pin drop. It was compelling evidence, and it showed in law that he had what we call a propensity to commit this type of offence.
As the prosecution's case seems to get stronger, Bell's testimony on the stand just falls apart. He admits being on the stairwell landing at the time of Terry's attack, but says he saw nothing.
He's within 10 feet of Terry being murdered and yet sees and hears nothing. It was fanciful.
So a jury considers the evidence against Bell for a third time. Just 3 hours later, they announce their decision. Guilty.
It was a day of jubilation, really, for the family. There were loud shouts and cheers as the verdict was announced in Maidstone Crown Court.
There was an outpouring of pent-up emotion that had been there for a long period of time.
It was extremely satisfying when we were able to hear the guilty verdict and realise that we'd achieved some sort of justice for Terry's family.
Philip Bell is eventually sentenced to 28 years in jail.
He was evil. That's how the judge described him after the trial, and that's a fair description of him.
Justice is a consolation for the family, but it will never bring their beloved daughter back. Terry was a bright, intelligent girl, and she had a long life to look forward to that was cruelly taken away by Philip Bell, for no reason, really.
And the case has left its mark on the quiet Kent town of Tunbridge Wells.
I think Tunbridge Wells has never really got over the murder of Terry Edmonds, and I think the wounds are still there in Tunbridge Wells because Terry was part of our community and a lovely young woman. You could feel that fear and sadness that this had happened in our town.
A beloved mother and friend.
Sarah was the sweetest person on this earth.
She wanted to do anything for you to make you happy.
Murdered in her home.
Just the sheer brutality. Somebody was out of control.
It was so terrifying. It was so frightening.
Sends police on the hunt for a killer.
Possible suspect right away is her husband.
And they find out, uh-oh, there's someone else involved with this person.
You were just sitting there wondering, are they ever going to find who did this?
But the search for the truth.
This is strange. There were so many twists and turns. What really happened?
Uncovers a culprit.
Something's going on here. They were never even on the suspect radar.
That surprises everyone.
Wow, that was a twist none of us expected.
It was shocking.
No, this isn't right.
I never expected that someone like that could be evil.
Howard County, Maryland, an affluent community nestled between Baltimore and Washington, D.C.
Howard County itself is a very quiet, peaceful suburb.
Howard County is very much a bedroom community. People move here for the schools. That's what it's known for. There's very, very little crime.
But on Sunday, November 15th, 1998, at 7:44 p.m., a concerned resident makes a call to police.
I have a friend who I normally hear from every day, and I haven't heard from her all day, and there's a really funny message on my machine from last night. And I wondered if someone could drive by her house and check it out.
What's the lady's name?
Sarah Roris.
I did not hear from Sarah all day. That is not normal. Something's wrong.
Laura tells police that the 35-year-old single mother lives with her 1-year-old son, but the boy is with his father this weekend. Patrol officers head to the Roris home in the township of Elkridge to investigate.
The police were able to gain access to the house, and upon entering the house, they conducted a sweep, and in the back family room, they found the body of Sarah Roris. It appeared that she'd been stabbed to death.
Even hardened homicide investigators are taken aback when they see Sarah's mutilated body.
The thing that still sticks in my mind is just the sheer brutality. I can close my eyes and see it as vividly today as I did then. The ones most visible were wounds to Sarah's neck and throat, multiple deep cuts and slashes. She was basically just short of being decapitated. She had severe cuts to each wrist. Her hands were just short of being cut completely off. There was a series of stab wounds to her stomach. Tremendous amount of blood on the floor around her, blood spattered up and down the walls. There was blood splattered all over the child's toys. It was complete and utter overkill. Somebody was out of control.
Could the vicious nature of the attack mean this was a crime of passion? Detectives hunt for clues to help piece together this gruesome event.
It was apparent that she had been dead for a period of time before we discovered her. The blood had pretty much dried. I was estimating she probably had been dead for about 24 hours. There had been forced entry to the house. Bloody boot prints leading from the body indicate that the suspect both entered and exited through the window. There appeared to be some degree of ransacking. VCR appeared to be missing. The phone was missing from the wall. A couple drawers in the kitchen had been rifled through, but at the same time, the victim's laptop, computer, purse, and items were relatively untouched on the kitchen table. An initial thought on our part was, could it all be staging in an attempt to throw us off, to make us think it was a robbery or burglary gone bad?
Looking for witnesses, police fan out to speak with Sarah's neighbors on her quiet suburban street.
As brutal and as violent as this attack was, nobody heard anything, not a sound.
Inside the house, the forensic team spends hours gathering evidence.
On the wall above Sarah's body, crime scene technicians were able to recover a couple bloody fingerprints. It indicated that the person was wearing gloves.
Investigators must now solve the mystery of why Sarah Roris would fall prey to such a brutal attack. Detectives start by speaking with Sarah's friend, Laura Billiter, who first called police. They have to reveal the heartbreaking news that her friend is dead.
I didn't want it to be true. I was in denial, and you just can't process information for a while. You're frozen. I kept trying to deny that it was Sarah. No one deserves to die like that.
Sarah Williamson was born on a Florida military base in 1963, the daughter of an Air Force sergeant. Growing up, she was gregarious with a knack for mathematics.
Sarah was not your typical introverted mathematician. She was very sociable.
To describe Sarah, she gave love freely. She wanted to do anything for you to make you happy.
After graduating college, Sarah moved to Maryland, where she took a job as a statistician at the National Security Agency.
Sarah and I met at work, and she was the best friend you could ever have. Sarah was the sweetest person on this earth. She had friends everywhere at work. She had built up a reputation for herself. She was well respected. And she always was going to school or improving herself in some way.
In 1991, while earning a master's degree, Sarah met Lorenzo Raris, and they began a relationship. The two married in 1994.
Sarah wanted the husband, the children, the house in the country, the white picket fence. She wanted that golden dream.
After 3 years of marriage, Sarah and Lorenzo had a son, Will.
She was a great mom. She doted on Will.
But the new baby put a strain on the marriage.
Her family was down in Alabama, so she was missing that support system. Lorenzo did very little to help her.
Over the next year, friends saw their relationship deteriorate.
Things really took a downturn. The marriage was breaking down. Sarah, during all that, was a complete mess.
In 1998, Sarah and Lorenzo separated. Eager for a fresh start, Sarah filed for divorce.
She was just becoming a strong woman again, proud of the fact that she was able to live on her own and take care of her child on her own. It was wonderful to see.
Now, 5 months later, Sarah's been found butchered in her own living room. The beloved mother's lifeless body left laying in a pool of blood.
She had become such a strong, independent woman, and I was so proud of her. I was devastated.
Laura gives detectives the phone message from her answering machine that prompted Laura to call police in the first place.
I couldn't understand any of it because it was so garbled. The only thing I knew, somebody was in trouble. I did a redial, and I figured out it was from Sarah.
In listening to the recording, you can hear sounds of a struggle, followed by a series of short, sharp screams. It was 30, 40 seconds, basically, of Sarah being murdered. I believe that she was probably in the process of maybe trying to call 911 when she inadvertently hit the preset speed dial for Laura.
The timestamp on the message is 8:46 p.m. on Saturday night, only 36 hours earlier.
The recording gave us a starting point that we know on this date and this time, Sarah Raris was attacked and murdered.
I could hear her last moments. I was shocked, I was horrified. And then I got angry, and I'm like, you gotta go pick up Lorenzo, he's involved in this.
Laura was aware Sarah was involved in a very bitter and heated custody dispute with her estranged husband. She had real fear that it was not going to end well. So I wanted to talk to the husband.
This is not going to be a random act of violence. This is going to be murder.
Coming up, a hunt for the truth.
Something's going on here. We had to look into the possibility of an affair.
Reveals buried secrets.
We opened the door and he threw up all over the parking lot. He knows something.
And a stunning turn in the case.
I was absolutely shocked. It's like out of a movie.
It was such an unexpected twist.
Hours after discovering the body of 35-year-old Sarah Raris, detectives investigating the murder have a lead. Sarah's friend Laura tells police she suspects Sarah's estranged husband, Lorenzo Raris, might have had something to do with her murder.
We found out that Sarah was involved in an extremely contentious custody divorce situation. Internal police records had indicated that the police had responded there at least once before for disturbance between Sarah and her estranged husband.
After Will was born, the marriage really started breaking down. Lorenzo was very jealous of his child because his child was taking away the attention that he had received from Sarah. Sarah told me that he was not happy with that.
Sarah turned to Lorenzo's mother, Amelia, who lived nearby, for help.
Sarah wanted Amelia involved. She was hoping that Amelia would be a calming influence on Lorenzo, and it would also allow, Sarah to spend a little bit more time with Lorenzo.
Instead of getting better, things got worse.
Sarah confided in me his mother was a little too involved doing all of the caregiving, and Lorenzo wanted nothing to do with the day-to-day task that it takes to raise a child. Sarah was very adamant that Lorenzo is his father. He needs to be very involved in taking care of their son.
One morning, I got a phone call. Sarah was hysterical. She and Lorenzo got into an argument. He tried to hit her while she was holding Will, so she had to turn with the baby in her arms, and he had kicked her. She was just distraught. And I'd come pick her up, and we head straight to the courtroom. We put a restraining order in, and Lorenzo is not allowed back into the house. Lorenzo was extremely mad. Sarah was scared for her life. She was deathly afraid that she was going to be murdered.
Lorenzo Rauris is approached by the Howard County Police for questioning.
When Lorenzo was first notified that his wife had been murdered, he covered his face with his hands. He fell to his knees. And in the initial officer's minds, he pretended to be crying and weeping into his hands, and that when he stood up, there was no evidence at all that he had been crying. One of the first things I noticed in dealing with Lorenzo was his lack of reaction, his lack of emotion, his lack of caring was significant. I thought he was smug, I thought he was arrogant. I just sensed he wasn't all that upset by what had happened to Sarah.
Detectives start by asking the 33-year-old sales manager if he had any involvement in Sarah's murder.
He denied it, that he'd had anything to do with it. At the same time, I just felt that there was something off. It was just an instinct on my part, but I couldn't put my finger on it.
Lorenzo offers up his own theory as to who killed Sarah.
He alluded to the fact that Sarah may have been involved or been having an affair with a previous co-worker, but he said that if anything had happened, it would have probably been a result of this affair.
Lorenzo claims the last time he saw Sarah was on Friday morning when he picked up their son for the weekend.
The alibi that he provided for the Saturday night and weekend in question was that he was at home at the family house with the baby. His brother and his parents, who also lived in the house, were there.
Detectives collect evidence from Lorenzo to search against anything found at the crime scene.
We had a search warrant for his person, which allowed us to collect samples of DNA, hair, photographs, and fingerprints.
With nothing concrete to tie Lorenzo to the murder, detectives have to let him go.
Even though everything was pointing towards Lorenzo, he still has an alibi when he's saying he's at home and he's got all these family witnesses. If in fact he did it, we need to start punching holes in the family alibi.
Investigators head to the Rauris family home, 30 minutes away in Parkville.
His car was seized, and other detectives then launched into the search of the Rauris family home. We conducted interviews with all the family members, including Lorenzo's mother, Amelia. When asked where she was on that Saturday night, she said that she was working. She was a nurse's aide at a local nursing home, so she was at work during the time frame of the homicide.
Amelia tells detectives that another member of the Rauris family was at home that night.
Lorenzo's brother, Mike, lived with the Rauris family in Parkville. They all lived in the same house. Mike is the younger brother of Lorenzo, but as far as their personalities, there was a distinct difference between the two. He didn't have the same degree of arrogance or smugness about him that Lorenzo had. He appeared to be somewhat timid.
Mike tells police that Lorenzo was at home when he woke up to go work his night shift job.
It's The family's saying he was there. A family alibi, in my opinion, has never been rock solid. It has to be investigated.
But a search of the Raris home fails to yield any new clues.
Nothing of evidentiary value came from the Raris house. Nothing of evidentiary value came from his truck. The only thing we walked away with is we had his initial denials and his initial alibi. From that point on, he lawyered up.
As detectives consider their next move, the public concern about the murder of Sarah Raris grows.
This murder sent shockwaves through the Howard County community. It caused major headlines.
There are a lot of Sarahs in this community, so to have a smart, competent, career-driven woman murdered in this way in her house, it was shocking.
With nothing tying Lorenzo to the murder, investigators turn their attention to his allegation that Sarah was having an affair. Could that have led to her death?
We had to look into the possibility of an affair. The former boss that Lorenzo claimed she was having an affair with had to be tracked down and interviewed. The relationship between the two of them, we had to look at it. We had to investigate.
Police investigating the savage murder of Sarah Raris are looking into her estranged husband's claim that Sarah had been having an affair with her former boss.
Lorenzo had implied that Sarah was having an affair with a former co-worker or supervisor, a gentleman by the name of Don Lewis. He had since retired from NSA and was living in Massachusetts.
Detectives travel to Cape Cod to interview Don Lewis. The 51-year-old tells detectives that he is not surprised by Lorenzo's claim of an affair.
Mr. Lewis told us that Lorenzo had emailed accusing him of having an affair with Sarah. He denied it. He said he was a father figure or mentor to Sarah. There was no romantic overtones, and there was no reason for him to kill her, nor did he want anything bad to happen to her.
Don tells detectives he had been shocked to hear news of Sarah's death, and he was at a friend's dinner party hundreds of miles away when it happened.
Mr. Lewis had an alibi for the Saturday night. He was in Massachusetts the night of the murder, and they had a solid alibi.
Detectives reach out to those close to Sarah to learn more about her relationship with her former boss.
Don Lewis was a friend of hers. They did have a mentor-mentee relationship, but that was all there was to Don Lewis.
It was more like a father-daughter type of relationship. There was never a romance.
The investigation revealed that the affair aspect of it appeared to be pure fabrication on the part of Lorenzo. There was just nothing there.
A week following her death, those closest to Sarah gather to honor her memory.
The church memorial was packed. There was so much love in that room. Everybody showed up. All of her coworkers and friends from work showed up. The police showed up. Lorenzo didn't show up, nor did any of the rest of the family.
I actually covered her memorial service. Her friends were not shy about casting aspersions on Lorenzo Raris, her husband. That's their suspect number one, their prime suspect.
After Sarah's funeral, investigators speak with the medical examiner about what was found during the autopsy.
The cause of death was no surprise. It was massive blood loss due to the lacerations to her throat. She bled out over 80% of her blood volume. Even the pathologist characterized it as complete overkill.
A forensics report reveals no useful fingerprints from the crime scene. But investigators still hold hope for tests on the bloody glove prints found on the wall behind the body.
The blood was sent out for DNA analysis. That takes a little bit of time to obtain.
While they await test results, detectives revisit their strongest lead, the phone message that captured the final moments of Sarah's life.
Other detectives are listening to the tape, and they thought that at some point in the struggle, they heard Sarah utter the name Mike.
Could Sarah be calling out the name of her killer?
Somebody says, oh, right there, it sounds like Mike. I hear Mike. Lorenzo's brother's name is Mike or Michael.
But what possible motive could Mike Rauris have to kill his sister-in-law?
One of the theories that we were kicking around at this point was, could it have been a family member? Because initially all suspicion would have fallen on Lorenzo. And to keep Lorenzo out of it and to maintain the child custody, to have a family member do it, most logical one would have been Mike. He had to be looked at as a potential suspect.
Detectives sit down with Lorenzo's little brother and play him the answering machine message.
The recording was played for him, and Mike was asked, do you hear the name Mike? And he said no, he did not. Mike denied being personally involved in the murder of Sarah. My overall impressions of Mike was, I don't think he had it in him to do something like this, but I had a feeling that there was something playing on him. Again, he was part of Lorenzo's alibi that he was at home at the time of the murder.
Mike sticks to the story he'd previously told police, that when he woke up Saturday evening to go to work, Lorenzo was at home.
Blood was drawn, hairs were pulled. We fingerprinted him, we photographed him. We drove him back to his job. I told him, I said, I think you know what happened. I think you know what is going on. And we opened the door and he threw up all over the parking lot. And I said, whenever you want to come clean on this, you know who to call, and I gave him my card. My partner and I, we both felt he knows something.
Detectives investigating the murder of Sarah Rauris suspect that her brother-in-law, Mike Rauris, might know more about her murder than he is letting on.
My feeling was something's going on here. Maybe if he didn't do it, he definitely knows about it.
Mike's brother and Sarah's estranged husband, Lorenzo Rauris, is still a suspect in Sarah's murder. But both men say they were at home together at the time she was killed.
If there was one avenue to break the Rauris family alibi, I just thought the weak link was going to be Mike. Problem was, the lawyer that was representing Lorenzo got involved, and from that point on, we were not allowed to speak with Mike without counsel being present. That threw up a huge wall.
A month following the murder, the police investigation is at a standstill. But there is one person that investigators think might be able to help.
Lorenzo had been married previously. His first wife, Becky, was still living locally. We thought she's somebody that we could enlist.
Detectives meet with Becky Rauris to ask for her assistance in the investigation.
Once she heard that Sarah had been murdered, Becky actually agreed to help us. She still had some degree of relationship with Lorenzo. They were cordial to each other. Becky agreed to allow us to record her phone calls with Lorenzo. We were hoping to obtain statements from Lorenzo that would incriminate him in the murder.
Becky reaches out to her ex-husband and tries to steer their conversation to Sarah's murder.
She was phenomenal. She conducted a number of controlled calls on our behalf with him. We were hopefully optimistic that we would get something, but he never said anything incriminating to her on those recordings.
Detectives have hit a dead end in their pursuit of Sarah's killer.
I remember cornering the police chief out of like a public event to ask him, hey, any updates on the case? And he obviously said no. There were no updates to give. They had nothing.
I prayed every day that this would be the day that something, you know, would come forth.
Investigators get new hope when DNA analysis of blood from the glove prints at the crime scene comes back.
The blood came back as a mixture of Sarah's DNA and an unknown male. We were confident that we had the killer's DNA because it's mixed with Sarah's blood. If we found that person, then we could definitely put them at the scene with her actually bleeding.
Could this finally be what detectives need to tie Lorenzo to his wife's murder?
We submitted DNA samples from Lorenzo and his brother Mike for DNA comparison. Came back that neither one were a match. Obviously, that was a bit of a blow. I mean, it's very disappointing. Even though everything was pointing towards Lorenzo, it's not him.
In the beginning, you know, it was pretty clear the police thought that her husband played a role in this. She had a very messy divorce going on. There were custody disputes, but the police didn't arrest him. And so there was a real air of mystery about it because the police couldn't figure it out either.
If Lorenzo was not responsible for the murder of Sarah, who could her killer be? And why was the beloved mother killed in such a violent manner? Investigators are back to square one.
Something has got to give on this. You go back through it again. Did I miss something? You have to look at everything. I did contact the FBI Behavioral Sciences Unit in Quantico, and they run it against all other cases in the country looking for similarities. Nothing of value came from that.
Detectives also seek help with deciphering the answering machine message from Laura that captured Sarah's attack.
We sent the recording to the FBI to see if they could clean it up and enhance it to try to determine if in fact it was a name. But well, it turned out it's not Mike. The whole thing with hearing the name Mike, I think, in hindsight, was just pure power of suggestion.
When you have a murder of this sort and no arrest, there was a concern and tension in the community as to what kind of person would do something like this.
We had been hammering away on this thing for almost 7, 8 months. At that point, we're kind of like dead in the water. We felt there was nothing else we could do to advance the case.
You were just sitting there wondering, are they ever going to find who did this? You started to lose hope.
Just as the case goes cold, an urgent call comes in from a neighboring jurisdiction.
My partner came running down the hall and says, you need to come down and take this call. I have Baltimore County Homicide on the phone. You need to hear this. We got it. We got this case.
The 7-month hunt for the killer of Sarah Raris is at a standstill when detectives investigating the murder receive an unexpected phone call.
Picked up the phone and it was Detective Phil Morrill from Baltimore County. He says, hey, he says, I just got done running a wired conversation with an inmate in the Baltimore County Detention Center, talking about how he committed this murder of a woman. He described how he went through the window and how he attacked her, and how he stabbed her in the belly. And he says, I damn near took her head off. And he says, do you guys have anything like it? And I said, oh yeah, we do. The murder of Sarah Raris. And he said, well, you need to hear this tape.
Howard County investigators get a copy of the jailhouse recording of Ardale Tickles, who had been locked up for an armed robbery 3 months ago.
We sat down and we started listening to the tape of Ardale Tickles. Tickles is describing this homicide that he had committed.
He's like, no, don't kill me, please don't. And I started driving her and I'm done. And blood was just gushing out. All that rich, there ain't no blood. I took the knife and I just took her head off.
Tickles is describing things that only the police and the suspect would know, all the injuries that had been inflicted upon Sarah. None of that had been released. None of that had been made public. I knew now we had it. I mean, I'm confident Ardell Tickles committed this murder.
Tickles keeps talking and has an even bigger revelation.
He's talking about how he came to be employed to do this.
I was out saying, you know what I'm saying, the lady while I was working out, she told me to go hit this lady on. She just gave me the head to do it, I went to go do it.
It's now a straight-up murder for hire. We had the actual physical killer of Sarah Raris. We needed the person who hired him and paid him to conduct the murder, a co-worker. We had some homework to do.
Who was this mysterious co-worker? What was her relation to Sarah? And why would she want Sarah killed? Investigators start with Ardell Tickles.
He's 19 years old. He's a kid at this point. He was incarcerated awaiting trial. He robbed the McDonald's and he shot the manager during the course of the robbery. When we started digging into him, we couldn't find any kind of criminal record with him prior to this.
Detectives checked Tickles' employment history, looking for any intersection with Sarah's life or those that knew her.
We went back like a year. He was employed in the laundry room at a local nursing home in Baltimore. He did the laundry for this facility.
The entire investigation turns when detectives realize who also worked at the same nursing home.
Lorenzo's mother, Amelia, they were co-workers. That was kind of mind-blowing, you know. She was never even on the suspect radar. Him and Amelia working at the same nursing home, it was the one piece to the puzzle that you needed to put in, and the rest of them just kind of fell into place after that.
Could it really be true that this 63-year-old grandmother hired someone to kill her daughter-in-law? And if it is true, who else knew about it?
We still weren't convinced that Lorenzo was completely blameless in this. So there was still a lot of investigative work to do. The Raris house in Parkville was put under surveillance while we investigated the relationship between Tickles and Amelia. We matched up work schedules. We were able to establish, yes, they worked together. Yes, they worked the same hours. We were able to locate a few co-workers who remember seeing Amelia talking to this guy. We were able to show that relationship did in fact exist.
But even with a known relationship, police had no evidence Amelia plotted to murder Sarah. To get to the truth, investigators turned to the man they believe killed Sarah.
Tickles was brought in to try to elicit his cooperation. What he gives up, we can use.
Detectives play Tickles the jailhouse recording.
I have the tape recording set to a point where he admits to stabbing her. He heard his voice talk about the murder. As you can see, we don't need your confession. No, we got it.
Can you please enlighten me on what I'm facing and what I'm dealing with in this case?
You're going to be charged with one count of first-degree murder. But we need to get some details worked out. The person we want is this woman that hired you. I had a picture of Amelia. I said, is this the woman? And he says, yeah, that's her. We got her. I mean, it was huge. In some respects, it validated what we thought all along, that everything originated in the Raris household, in the Raris family. Never in 100 years would we have thought that she's the one that was calling the shots. What did she say to you?
For a minute, she couldn't go on with life until this lady was dead. She was like, do me a favor and kill this lady, basically.
So she used the word kill?
Kill, take him off the earth, yeah. And she said, I'll pay you. She said, I'll give you money.
If you hire somebody to commit a murder and that person carries it out, then you're susceptible to the same charges and the same penalties as the person who did the actual killing. So now we're looking at first-degree murder charges for Amelia. After it was over with, did you call this woman that night?
No, I met her at work. like that week.
Okay, is that what she paid you?
Yeah, she had a bundle of like $3,000.
Despite Tickle's revelations, investigators know it will be hard to bring charges against Amelia on the word of a jailed offender.
We had enough. We could have easily arrested Tickles and called it case closed. We needed something that really implicated Amelia in the conspiracy. What we wanted him to do to nail down the first-degree murder charge was get on the phone and call Amelia. We wanted to run a controlled call with him, and he refused. When that didn't happen, we had some work to do.
Investigators now suspect Sarah Raris was murdered in a hit organized by her mother-in-law, Amelia Raris. But the hitman, Ardale Tickles, refuses to take part in a wiretap to implicate her.
I would have loved to have got this controlled phone call to Amelia to further establish Amelia's involvement in the planning of the murder, but we still felt we were on the right track. A big item of evidence in this case obviously would be follow the money. We pulled Amelia's financial records and found out, sure enough, Amelia wrote a check out in the amount that Tickles says he got paid, and she wrote it out to cash. That was key. That's the money trail.
Amelia Raris is arrested and interviewed by detectives.
She acknowledged her relationship with Tickles, and she also acknowledged that she hired him, but she alleged that she did not hire him to kill her. He did that on his own, she said. I just wanted to scare her.
There was no intention to kill. I didn't know that it's like that. In fact, I thought he's not going to kill her. He is just going to stone the house. You know, you throw the stone there.
$3,000 to stone the house?
Yes, to stone the house and make her feel sorry as a revenge for me.
Amelia told us she wanted Sarah scared because she felt that Sarah, throughout their relationship, had disrespected her, did not acknowledge her as a woman with more maternal experience.
Because of the child?
Because of the child. I am not welcome to help. I think she did not like my style. The mother in my culture is revered and respected. I want to be treated with respect. I'm her mother. My marriage, she disrespected me. That is a slap on my face, and it is even more than death to me.
I understand. You were insulted.
Oh my God. Million words more than that. Showing disrespect to a mother is death.
Is it enough, though, to have someone to do it?
Yes. Because if you're me.
I think she was trying to portray herself as this poor little old lady who was as much a victim as anything. We weren't buying any of it. I mean, it's pure evil. There's no other way to describe, what happened here.
Then, detectives ask Amelia the question they've been trying to answer since day one.
Is Lorenzo involved?
No.
Does he know to this day what happened?
No. I do not want to tell my son. Because if I tell him, he will have problems. He loves the woman very much.
He's still in love with her?
Yeah.
Does Michael know anything about this?
No. What will I tell him?
Despite Amelia's claim that she had no intention for Sarah to be killed, police proceed with charges against her.
We were able to establish that she hired him and paid him. That gave us more than enough to further solidify the case we had against her already.
The case against Ardale Tickles is strengthened when tests match his DNA to blood evidence found at the crime scene.
Both Ardale Tickles and Amelia Raris were charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy, and in Amelia's case, she was charged with the crime of solicitation.
When we first heard that it was Amelia, the feeling was, no, this isn't right.
When I found out about her, I'm like, where the heck did Amelia come from?
I was absolutely shocked that the mother-in-law orchestrated the entire thing, and there was a hitman who did it was, wow, that was a twist none of us expected. Like, there's no way. It's like out of a movie.
In January of 2000, both Ardale Tickles and Amelia Raris faced trial for the murder of Sarah Raris.
There was no trial for Ardale Tickles.
He was going to go to trial, and Ardale Tickles unexpectedly decides to plead guilty. He's completely remorseful. He says, you know, I shouldn't have done it. And then he got life in prison from the judge.
Amelia Raris enters a plea of not guilty.
She maintained her innocence that she had just paid this guy $3,000 to go throw stones at the house.
I testified at the trial. I was there to let the jury know who Sarah was. I was afraid they would see this sweet, meek little old lady and not believe that someone like that could be evil and could organize this murder.
Ardale Tickles refuses to testify, but prosecutors present the recording of his police interview describing the plot and the crime, as well as the telephone message that captured Sarah's last moments of life.
It was so terrifying. It was so frightening. It was so unspeakably brutal. It was chilling.
After a 7-day trial, Amelia Raris is found guilty of all charges. She is sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
I was relieved when the guilty verdict was read, and I am glad that they saw through that demeanor that she put on.
For those closest to Sarah, there will always be a void left behind.
She gave joy, she received joy. I really do miss her. I need to hear her laugh.
We lost a really good person that day. We lost a light. And I just hope that, you know, she's happy in God's arms and that she's looking out for Will. I miss her so much.